Hello Nidorinas and Nidorinos, I'm KingNido, and today it is the Opelucid Frontiers going up against the Olivine Raiders in what should be a huge collision between these two sides. But as they have a look at their opening hands, let's have a look at this tale of the tape, because the Opelucid Frontiers currently sitting in third place, the Olivine Raiders currently sitting in second. Whoever wins this series will make sure they are on top of the leaderboard. They have to just win 2 of the 3 games in this contest. So with that said, let us know in the comments below who you think is going to win this matchup. Will it be the Dragon decks? Will it be the Metal decks? Let's go!
3, 2, 1, go!
And starting off this matchup, it is going to be that Super Burst Impact deck of the Olivine Raiders, moving the Alolan Diglett into the active spot with the Magearna on the bench. It's the Dragon Majesty deck of the Opelucid Frontiers with the Dratini in the active spot, and they've already got that Dragonite in hand, as the Professor's Research from the Raiders will be played first. They do get an additional 2 cards, including that second Professor's Research. They do get the Ferrothorn in hand, and they've already got that other Ferrothorn in their hand as the Penny is pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers. We can see the Pokeball, the Leftovers, and the Big Malasada, and they won't be able to capitalize on a Professor's Research in the deck of the Raiders, as it is the Dramper being pulled thanks to that Pokeball. The Penny is played, and there are actually no supporter cards left inside the deck of the Raiders, as it is a Fire Energy put onto the Dratini. This deck does generate Fire, Lightning, and Water type energy. They do have the Druddigons also inside this deck. As the Pokeball is pulled for the Raiders, the Diglett has just taken that 20 damage from the beat of the Dratini, and there is that second Alolan Diglett thanks to the Pokeball, and the Professor's Research also being played. That does get them the X-Speed and the Ferroseed, which is perfect because they've already got those 2 Ferrothorns in hand. Ferroseed is immediately moved onto the bench. The Headbutt from Diglett is set up, and 20 damage back onto the Dratini here, leaving it with only 40 health remaining, as it is the Lily being pulled, who can restore 60 health from a stage 2 Pokemon, that being the Dragonite, as the Dramper is immediately moved onto the bench for the Frontiers. That Lightning energy going onto the Dratini. We can see that on their next turn it will be a Fire type energy, and Dragonite does require at least 1 Water and 1 Lightning, as the Repel is pulled for the Olivine Raiders here. They are going to get that Ferrothorn onto the bench, who can, with its ability, do recoil damage to the opposing Pokemon. And they are thinking of playing the Repel, are the Raiders. They want to drag that Dramper out into the active spot, who does have 100 health, but this could actually be great for the Frontiers, because this keeps Dratini on the bench, allowing them time to set up that Draco Meteor of Dragonite here, as Diglett does only have 10 health remaining though, and Dramper will not be able to discard it because it does require 2 energy. It does get its first Fire Energy here. It can take any type of energy required though, as it will be a Water Energy next for this Dragon Majesty deck. And the Frontiers also opting to use that potion onto Dratini, taking it back up to full strength here. They've got the Big Malasada still in hand, plus the Leftovers. Now the Leftovers is a Pokemon tool, so the Pokemon holds onto it. If it's in the active spot, it restores 10 energy at the end of their turn. But it is the Alolan Dugtrio being pulled for the Raiders, immediately moved into the active spot. That Iron Head, as it gets its second energy. It is a coin flip move. It needs consecutive heads, but as soon as it gets the tails, as we just saw, it does get cut off, so it is going to do 0 damage. But for every heads, it has the potential to do 70 damage for each one. And it is that second Dratini being pulled for the Opelucid Frontiers here. They can get an energy onto the Dramper and go on the offensive, but they are going to get that Dratini on the bench, and they're opting to make sure that they do get a Water Energy here onto the Dratini that already has a Lightning Energy. They want to be able to set up the Dragonite, but it is this second Alolan Dugtrio being pulled for the Raiders. They've already got the Diglett in hand as well, and they are going to move that into that last benched position. They try again for another Iron Head, and it's another Tails immediately, so more 0 damage being done from this Dugtrio. This is fantastic for the Frontiers, buys them a bit of time with the Dramper. They have just pulled their Poison Barb as well. They've generated a Fire Energy, moving that onto the Dramper. With this Dragon Breath, it can do 70 damage. It is also a coin flip though. If it's Tails, it does nothing. If it's Heads, it does 70 damage, and it paralyzes the opposing Pokemon, even though Dugtrio only has 50 health remaining. There is the Poison Barb onto Dramper as well. With the coin flip, they do get the heads, and Dugtrio will be discarded from the board as the Frontiers take the first point here in game 1 of this 3-game series, where for every game a team does get 2 points added to their total on the leaderboard here, which means they can get a maximum of 6 points across the 3 games. Now, all the damage and discarded cards do count towards the leaderboard as well, but you want those wins. You want the clean sweep, as the Ferrothorn is in the active spot, does get its 3rd energy for that spinning attack, and they play the Guzma, which discards that poison buff. And this leaves Drampa with only 10 health remaining. If it goes on the offensive, it will take the recoil damage from the Ferrothorn, as it is the second Drampa being pulled here for the Frontiers, immediately being moved onto the bench as well, and it does receive that water energy that was generated. As we can see, those steel spikes, they recoil 20 damage, similar to what the Dridigan does. So both these sides have Pokemon that can make the opposition hesitant to go on the offensive, but they still try for it, and the Frontiers, they get their heads 70 damage onto the Ferrothorn, but it also leaves it with that paralysis, so it cannot go on the offensive in the next turn. There is the 20 damage though back onto the Drampa, so Drampa is discarded. That is a point for the Raiders here on the board, both sides with 1 point each, and it is that second Drampa being moved into the active spot as the Ferroseed is pulled for the Raiders. Ferrothorn, with that paralysis, it is stuck in the active spot, but it cannot go on the offensive, so they start to set up the Dug Trio, and they do move that second Ferroseed onto the bench. They've already got that second Magina in hand, but they do have a full lineup here. They play the big Malasada. This cures Ferrothorn of that paralysis. Fantastic play there by the Raiders, because now they can get that spinning attack off. 70 damage to Drampa, leaving it with only 30 health remaining. It does come back over to the Frontiers. They finally get a rare candy. They have not pulled a Dragonair yet, but with this rare candy, they can evolve a Dratini straight into a Dragonite, skipping that stage 1. Dragonite is now online. It only requires 1 more energy to go on the offensive, but they do move a water energy onto this active Drampa, trying for the Dragon Breath. If they're successful in this heads flip, Ferrothorn will be discarded, and they get it as well. There will be the recoil damage onto the Drampa, leaving it with only 10 health remaining, but the Frontiers only need 1 more point. With both these sides going back and forth, this is what we expected. Neither of these sides were in Season A1 of the PokeType League TCG. The Raiders debuting in Season A2. The Frontiers debuting this season. This is their first season, and they're currently sitting in 3rd place on the leaderboard, as the second Ferrothorn is online, as is the Magina. The Dug Trio needs to flip the heads with this Iron Head. It can do infinite damage, but it gets a Tails again. No damage from the Iron Head here on to the Drampa. This is great for the Frontiers. This will buy them an opportunity to capitalize on. They do pull the Guzma. They've currently generated a fire energy that they get on the Dragonite, who's already got the required water and lightning type. They are going to retreat the Drampa back to the bench, moving Dragonite. This Draco Meteor, 200 damage, split 4 ways, 50 damage across the board, but it can do a maximum of 200 to 1 Pokemon. They're going for it, and they do get 50 damage onto the Alolan Dug Trio, but it's 100 damage onto one of the benched Maginas, and the Frontiers take game 1. And as we have our first table reset, if you're enjoying what you're seeing, please leave a like and subscribe so you don't miss out on any of the action in the PokeType League TCG. And again, it will be the Raiders going first, this time with their Ultra Wormhole deck. They've got that Stack Attacker, the only Pokemon card in hand, moved into the active spot for the Frontiers. They're going with their Soaring Storm deck. They've got the Rayquaza, but they've got that Pikipek as well going into the active spot. Rayquaza is going on to the bench, but here we go. It is Game 2. The Frontiers want to lock up the series here with this matchup and ensure that they will finish on top of the leaderboard at the end of this series. The Beast Wall has been pulled for the Raiders. They play the Pokeball though, guaranteed a basic Pokemon from their deck, and it is going to be that Duskmane Necrozma going on to the bench. The Beast Wall can only be played whilst the opposition has not taken any points, but this will reduce the damage that Stack Attacker takes in the next turn by 20. And with that, the Raiders do send it over to the Frontiers, who do pull the Drampa. They've got the Berserk Drampa in this deck. It does also only require 2 energy, but it does do 20 damage, an extra 50 though if one of the benched Pokemon has taken damage. And there it is, Pikipek receiving its first energy, but the Peck will do 0 because Stack Attacker did have that Beast Wall set up in the previous turn. The second Pokeball being pulled here for the Raiders as well, so they're going to get another basic Pokemon. This Soaring Storm deck as well for the Frontiers does generate Psychic and Grass type energy. Only 2 different energies being generated here. As the Meltan is pulled for the Raiders, they move it onto the bench, a first energy. onto the Stack Attacker, and it comes back to the Frontiers, who pull the Trumbeak. It doesn't require an additional energy to continue on the damage, so they get that online. It does do 30 with the Glide, and they're going to get a first energy onto the Dramper as well. Looking at that Berserk, as we said, 50 additional damage if a benched Pokemon on the side of the Frontiers has damage. 30 damage as well onto the Stack Attacker as it comes back to the Raiders. They pull the Melmetal, so they can get that online. It does require 3 energy, as does the Necrozma, but Stack Attacker receives its second and only required energy for this Brass Rock. 40 damage onto the Trumbeak, halving its health, and this will reduce damage that Stack Attacker takes in the next turn by 20. As a Lily is pulled for the Frontiers, they don't have the Toucannon though to use that on. It is the Dramper receiving its second energy, and they are going to retreat the Trumbeak, moving the Dramper into the active spot. As we said, this Berserk does 70 damage, but it will do 20 less thanks to that Brass Rock in the previous turn of the Stack Attacker. And the Raiders have pulled an X Speed now. They are going to get that Melmetal online here. They can start setting up their benched Pokemon. They do get an energy on to the Necrozma, and we can see they've got the Lusamine in hand as well. When a Pokemon has been discarded, the discarded energy, if the Lusamine is played, it can move 2 energy to an Ultra Beast. They have used the leftovers onto the Stack Attacker, bringing its health up to 40, and it does that Brass Rock again, bringing Dramper down to 60. Giratina though has been pulled for the Frontiers. It does require 3 energy, at least 1 Psychic and 1 Grass. They think of moving it onto the bench, but decide against it, instead getting an energy onto the Rayquaza here. And it will be another 50 damage as well from the Dramper. Now they just used the leftovers on the Stack Attacker, but that is not enough to keep it on the board. It has been discarded from this match. A first point for this Soaring Storm deck against the Ultra Wormhole deck. And the Raiders, though, they are going to move the Necrozma into the active spot as they pull their second Stack Attacker. They are going to play that Lusamine, immediately getting the 2 more energy that are required for that Black Metal from Necrozma, so they can start setting up Melmetal with energy generated in the energy zone. 100 damage, wiping Dramper off the board, and the Raiders quickly get a point back themselves. And they've also got that Beastite in hand. It can be attached to an Ultra Beast, and what it does is every point that side is taken, their offense does an extra 10 damage, which means Necrozma is capable of doing 120 damage with that in play. The Poison Barb is moved on to that now active Trumbeak, who has 40 health remaining, and the Frontiers are having a look through their hand about how they may want to approach this. They do get an energy onto the Trumbeak here, and it can get that 30 damage with the Glide onto the Necrozma. This is going to bring Necrozma down to only 80 health remaining, but with that said, it does discard energy when it goes for this Black Metal, so they will need to keep generating energy for it, as they have pulled the leftovers. And there is that Beastite that we were talking about being moved onto the Necrozma, so this Black Metal now does 110 damage, which means after it wipes this Trumbeak off the board, it is capable of doing 120, and with Rayquaza on the bench of the Frontiers, it only has 100 health remaining. This is fantastic for the Raiders, looking to bring back Game 2 here, and try and have our Game 3 as our decider on who takes the overall series. Rayquaza moved into the active spot. The Frontiers have just pulled the Professor's Research, and they are playing that immediately, as that Poison Barb has also left Necrozma with that Poison status condition, and now the Frontiers get the Toucannon, but this is not good for them because they do get that second energy onto Rayquaza, but Rayquaza does require 4 energy. This is fantastic for the Raiders. They are in full control. And the Frontiers know there is not much else they can do, but this is great for this Ultra Wormhole deck. They pull the Professor's Research, but they only care about getting that energy onto Necrozma, so they can go for this 120 power base metal and wipe Rayquaza off the board into the discard pile, and we are going to a Game 3 as the Ultra Wormhole deck takes Game 2, but with our final board reset, we are going into our decider. And for the third game in a row, it is the Raiders going first. This time they are using their Laser Focus deck up against the Vast Pony Canyon deck of the Frontiers. It is the Mawile moved into the active spot for the Raiders. There are the 2 Jangmo-Ros in hand for the Frontiers. They've got 1 in the active spot and 1 on the bench. They've got the Hakamo and the Gabite plus the Rare Candy in hand. For the Raiders, we can see the Sophocles, the Professor's Research, the Aggron and the Lairon. But here we go, the Raiders do pull their second Aggron here. That Sophocles partnering well with the Togedemaru's as that Professor's Research gets the Klefki, and there is one of the Togedemaru's with those bristling spikes as well, immediately moved on to the bench, as is the Klefki, who has that unlock, which allows them to draw an additional card. And there's the Hawlucha now being pulled for the Frontiers. Now this deck generates water, lightning, and fighting type energy. The Jangmo line does require, the Kommo-o in fact requires 1 lightning and 1 fighting, as that Headbutt does 20 damage to the Mawile. The Garchomp requires 1 water and 1 fighting. As a rare candy is pulled for the Raiders, they are going to get a first energy here onto the Mawile. However, Mawile can't go on the offensive yet. It does require 2 energy, and there is the Kommo-o being pulled for the Frontiers as they've generated the water energy. No fighting type energy in sight, and that is the risk here for the Frontiers with these multi-energy decks. But they are well versed in that, having been a part of the Hollow Allies for the first 2 seasons were the Dragon types. They do get the Kommo-o onto the bench, get our lightning energy onto it, so they can still go for these headbutts onto the Mawile with the Jangmo, as it can use any type of energy for that headbutt, whereas Hakamaru does require, again, 1 lightning and 1 fighting. And there is the second Lairon that was pulled for the Raiders as they get that second energy onto the Mawile, so it can go for this powerful Vice, 30 damage onto the Jangmo. If they flip their heads, it does leave Jangmo with that paralysis. It won't be able to go on the offensive in the next turn. They need something to cure it, but they can't because they have just pulled the Hawlucha. The only way they can cure Jangmo right now is if they were to play the rare candy. They can get the Kommo-o online, but it does not have the required energy to go on the offensive. The Frontiers need to decide if they're willing to drop a point here, because they're generating a water energy at the moment, and their next turn it will be a lightning energy, which is still not a fighting energy in sight. But they are hovering the rare candy, and they do decide to play it, so they will be able to get the Kommo-o online. This will ensure that they do not drop a point in the next turn. Kommo-o still has 120 health remaining, but it's got 2 water energy on it, neither of which are relevant unless they want to retreat it here. And they have just moved a Hawlucha onto the bench. That could actually be an option, and that is exactly what they're going to do here. So they move the Hawlucha into the active spot, discarding the 2 energy that were on the Kommo-o. It does come back over to the Raiders, and now they've pulled an Aron. They've got the Agrons in hand, plus they've got their own rare candy as well. They do get a first energy onto the Aron, but they're continuing with this powerful Vice, 30 damage onto the Hawlucha, bringing it down to 50 health. They want to leave it with that paralysis, but this time they do flip the tails. Is the leftovers being pulled here for the Frontiers. They're still generating lightning and water type energy, no fighting energy still. They do get that lightning energy though onto the Hawlucha, plus the leftovers that will restore that 10 health at the end of every turn the Frontiers have. But the Justified Press, 20 damage onto Mawile. It does do additional damage to darkness type Pokemon, but they are not going up against the darkness types or the Kitakami Rogues, in fact, in this matchup, as the second Togedemaru is pulled for the Raiders. They have a full bench, so they can't put that online. They can get the Lairon online, or they can use the rare candy if they so choose. That is exactly what they're going to do. They're going to get the Agron, who does require 4 energy for that Giga Impact, but it does 150 damage. And another powerful Vice, though, from the Mawile onto the Hawlucha, bringing it down to 30 health. Another coin flip, and they get their heads. Hawlucha will be left with that paralysis here. It does have the leftovers, though, so that will keep it in the match. We'll keep it out of discard range, sorry, from the Mawile. They do get the second Hawlucha onto the bench as well, and they're going to get a water type energy onto it. But with all they can do, they do end their turn, or they go to. First, they want to see if there's anything they may have missed with the Hawlucha, as it does restore their 10 health from the leftovers, having end their turn, and now it is cured of that paralysis. The Poison Barb being pulled for the Raiders. Mawile only has 10 health remaining, but it is still sticking around. They're going to retreat it, though. They don't want to drop a point. They move the Togedemaru into the active spot. They play the Sophocles. This boosts the damage that Togedemaru does by 30. It can do 60 damage. Hawlucha only has 40 health remaining, plus they put the Poison Barb onto Togedemaru. It will discard Hawlucha from the board. The Raiders, with this laser focus deck, have taken the first point here in game 3, but now with those bristling spikes, if Togedemaru takes damage in this coming turn, it will return 30 damage to the Hawlucha that is now in the active spot, as the Garchomp has been pulled for the Frontiers. They're just generating water energy at the moment, and they do get one onto that Kommo-o. They do need a Gibble if they hope to get the Garchomp online, and they will need it fast here as the Raiders pull their second Aron They did not go on the offensive with the Hawlucha. The Frontiers did not want to get that poison or recoil damage from the Togedemaru, who does go for the 30 damage onto the Hawlucha, setting up those bristling spikes again. And there's the Gible being pulled for the Frontiers, and we can see finally on their next turn they will generate a fighting type energy. And they do opt to get a water type energy onto the Gible. Or they're at least hovering it here, and that is the decision they do decide to make. Now, Komaru can't go on the offensive in the next turn. Hakamaru can, because it has a lightning energy on it here. And Gabite, if it were to come online in the next turn, it would be able to as well with a fighting type energy. As the rare candy has been pulled for the Raiders, they get a third energy here onto Aggron, one more energy, and it can go on the offensive. The bristling spikes again onto the Hawlucha, leaving it with only 20 health remaining. Comes back to the Frontiers. They pull their second Hakamaru, who's actually of no use to them, but now they're starting to generate these fighting type energies. They do get the Gabite onto the bench, and they do get a fighting type energy onto the Hakamaru. With that retreat from the Hawlucha, they discard the water energy. Hakamaru going into the active spot, the Dragon Claw, 60 damage here onto the Togedemaru. Although they do take a moment just to make sure that's what they want to do. Now Togedemaru will do 30 damage back to the Hakamaru and leave it with leave it with that poisoning as well to get an additional 10 on top of that 30 damage. The leftovers being pulled for the Raiders. Togedemaru only has 20 health remaining here. Raiders hovering an energy over the Aggron. That is the play they're going with, but they're continuing with the bristling spikes onto that Hakamaru, bringing it down to 30 health, and there is that additional 10 damage from the poisoning. The rare candy here being pulled for the Frontiers. And as we said, they've generated another fighting type energy. They will be generating a water energy on the next turn. They are going to get that Garchomp onto the bench, who does have 140 health. It cannot outlast a hit from the Aggron, but they're going with the Reckless Shearing. This allows them to discard a card from their hand, ban the Hakamaru, so they draw an additional card. It is the big Malasada. Now, Hakamaru does not have enough health, to withstand the recoil damage of those bristling spikes from the Togedemaru, even if that big Malasada restored 10 health and cured it of that poisoning. Really thinking about how best to approach this. They get the fighting energy onto the Garchomp. It can go for the Dragon Claw. They are thinking of playing that big Malasada, and that is the choice they're going with. So Hakamaru will be cured of the poisoning. It does get 30 health now in total, but again, it cannot outlast those bristling spikes. And still only in game 3, 1 point's only been taken, and that's by the Raiders here. The Frontiers looking at Hakamaru. They're going for the Dragon Claw. They're going to discard Togedemaru, but with that bristling spikes, the 30 damage back onto the Hakamaru. They were running out of time on this turn as well. Hakamaru is discarded, and so is Togedemaru. That's 1 point for the Frontiers, now 2 points for the Raiders. The Raiders only need one more point to lock up Game 3 and lock up this series. Now with both teams having one win, whoever loses this Game 3 will move up into second place, or in the Raiders' case, stay in second place, but the overall winner, and that is going to be the Raiders because of that Giga Impact. Garchomp is wiped clean off the board. The Raiders hold on and come out on top over the Frontiers. This will put them on top of the leaderboard, as next round they are going up against the Mela Rumbles, whereas for the Frontiers they do move up into second with one of those game wins, but next round they are going up against the Petalburg Razors. But until then, Nidorinos, thank you so much for watching. Let us know in the comments below what cards you pulled today, and if you enjoyed what you saw, please leave a like, share, subscribe, but more importantly, always remember, send thanks, and I'll see you when you see me.